Morning. It must be morning. I lay there, feeling a warm ray of sunlight slowly cross my face and touch my closed eyelids. The feeling was almost pleasant, if not for the heaviness in my head and a faint hint of nausea, reminiscent of the fact that I had too much to drink the day before. Where am I? Why can you hear the roar of waves around? Gradually, I began to come to my senses, my thoughts took shape, and I realized that I was somewhere in the tropics. The light, salty breeze filling the air and the cries of seagulls only intensified this feeling. My fingers felt the cool, almost silky fabric of the sheets, but I was wearing nothing except the necklace, which I apparently never took off. Damn it. My head was buzzing, and the memories of last night were spinning somewhere on the edge of consciousness, refusing to gather into a coherent picture. Only one thing was clear. I must have been very drunk to go to bed like that. I suddenly opened my eyes and my heart began to pound. Nearby, a man was sleeping peacefully on the bed. Naked. Crap. Some man. My companion. My partner in yesterday's crime. The sound of the waves merged with the roar in my head as memories hit me like a landslide. This shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have been at all. I was just going to spend the evening with friends, have a nice, friendly dinner. I even called my boyfriend before leaving, telling him that I loved him and not to worry. But how did things get out of control? How did I end up getting drunk and spending the night with this man, having wild sex, the most passionate sex of my life? A wave of panic rose inside me. I have to leave here. I could justify this act to myself by saying that I was drunk, that I just missed being touched, and that my boyfriend was so far away. But if I stay, if I continue this sober, it will become something completely different. This will be a conscious choice to change, to betray, and I will have to live with this. I quietly, almost on tiptoe, slipped out of bed, trying not to wake him. My heart was beating loudly in my chest, and my fingers were feverishly collecting my things scattered around the room. Dress, shoes. There was laundry left somewhere on the floor, but I decided that it didn't matter anymore. All I need now is to get dressed and leave quickly. Then I can deal with the consequences, with everything, both with betrayal and with friendship. Putting on the dress, I tried to move silently, but the telltale sound of heels on the wooden floor gave me away. He stirred in the bed, and my heart froze for a moment. The noise of footsteps, my too fast movements. All this seemed to wake him up. I had almost reached the door when he appeared in the bedroom doorway, just as naked as he was a few minutes ago. Trying to sneak out without saying goodbye. His voice was low and a little hoarse, still sleepy, but with hints of playfulness. I turned around at the sound of his words and was faced with that devilish smile. Oh my God, that smile! It pierced me like a knife, sapping all the resolve I had just worked so hard to muster. My heart began to beat faster, and my throat became dry. He looked too calm for what was happening, as if for him it was normal. No, not really. I started, trying to find the right words, but my brain seemed to refuse to work. My thoughts were tangled, like a ball of wool that someone had unceremoniously thrown into a corner. I remembered the matter. This was the worst attempt to justify myself in my life, but I didn't have time to come up with anything. I felt internal panic squeezing my throat. He began to approach, like a predator who knew all along that his prey was not going anywhere. I felt increasing tension with every step he took, with every second, as if the air around me had become thicker. His warmth was approaching, and I could hardly contain my trembling. When his fingers gently touched my chin and forced me to look up, I saw in his gaze a mixture of confidence and something else, something warm but dangerous. He kissed me briefly, tenderly, as if checking how I would react. My head was screaming for me to stop this. I almost immediately turned my face away, but this movement seemed weak and unconvincing to me, as if my body already knew what it wanted and did not want to hide it. No, you can't. My voice was trembling, and I tried to make it sound firm. I have a boyfriend. But my words lost their power with every sound I uttered. He came closer again, his breath burning my skin. If you really don't want this, you can leave. His words sounded quiet, but they seemed to echo inside me. He didn't hold me back, he just stood there, confident in himself and his influence on me. I froze, overwhelmed by contradictions. My mind was sounding the alarm like a siren, screaming that I needed to leave, that this was a mistake, that I couldn't let this continue. But with every moment my body, which yesterday had given itself over to passion, came to life again, calling for repetition. Desire rolled in and filled every cell of my being, drowning out common sense. My breathing quickened and the tension in my chest grew. I stood on the edge of the abyss, feeling myself being pulled down into the depths of desire from which I could not escape. We were on the brink again, but a sudden phone call cut through the air, breaking the fragile silence that enveloped us. A loud, sharp sound burst into our little shelter, like an alarm, bringing me back to reality. I froze for a moment, as if frozen, and felt the hot wave of desire slowly go away, giving way to awareness and common sense. The phone went silent, but not even a few seconds later it rang again. I pursed my lips, trying not to show my confusion, and, turning to my partner in crime, I grinned, trying to hide my inner excitement. "I think this is for you," I said, raising my eyebrows slightly. He sighed, smiling with slight regret, and headed towards the phone. While he was answering the call, I quickly began to get myself in order. She straightened her dress, smoothed out the wrinkled folds of the fabric, smoothed her hair, which seemed disorganized after a night full of passion. In the mirror, I could still see traces of yesterday. Swollen lips, a slight blush on my cheeks, a facial expression that left no doubt about what I was doing. It seemed to me that everyone could see it, and this feeling made me focus even more on my appearance. I wanted to look like I was just returning from a business meeting, not like someone leaving a hotel room after a big night out. When he finished the conversation, his expression remained calm, but I saw a slight hint of disappointment in his eyes. He came up to me, throwing the phone on the bed. "It was the hotel management," he said, still keeping that playful note in his voice. "It looks like we were a little late leaving. We need to leave the room as soon as possible." I grinned, realizing that the situation was even somewhat funny. Probably on time. "You're naughty," I teased him, but there was more lightness in these words than reproach. Not a bad end to a very good dinner. He bowed his head in agreement, his lips curling into a smile again. "Yes, you're right, but this seems to have slightly disrupted our plans." He paused as if contemplating something before adding, "Are you leaving right now?" I nodded, biting my lip, feeling a mixed wave of emotions rise inside me, relief and strange melancholy at the same time. "Yes, I think so. I need to comprehend everything that happened. This call brought me back to reality." I said this with heaviness in my voice, realizing that reality was already knocking on the door of this room, and I could no longer ignore it. "Can I see you later?" His question was full of hope, but without the confidence that I was used to seeing in him. I shifted my gaze, considering his offer. "Depends on what you mean by see." He grinned, his eyes sparkling again. "Well, I thought you could come over to my place. I'll cook dinner." He paused meaningfully, and his smile grew even wider, as if hinting at a continuation of last night. I sighed and looked at him directly. "I have a boyfriend, as you well know." The words stuck on my tongue, but I continued. "Last night was amazing, but I need time. It's all too fast." He looked at me without saying a word, but his facial expression said more than any words. Finally, he answered, softening his tone a little. "What if seeing you meant just meeting, having a glass like friends, without any hints?" I laughed involuntarily, relaxing, and shook my head. "It's hard to think about it when you're suggesting it while standing naked." I nodded in his direction, where he was still standing, not at all embarrassed by his nakedness. "It's a little distracting, but I think I agree. Write to me where and when." He nodded, and his smile softened. "Okay," he said quietly, as if already considering our next move. With that, I leaned over to give him a quick peck on the cheek. Leaving the hotel, I couldn't help but feel a little out of place. My heels clicked loudly on the marble floor, reminding me that I was still wearing my dress from the night before. Under normal circumstances, this might have seemed glamorous, but now it felt like a bright beacon, screaming that the night was unusual. However, no one paid much attention to me, except for a middle-aged man sitting in the lobby who looked away from his newspaper for a moment. His wife immediately reprimanded him, and I caught a glimpse of her irritated voice. Their scene was short, but to some extent it reflected my own internal torment. I got out into the street and hurried to catch a taxi. On the way home, the city seemed strangely calm, the morning light, the noise of cars, people rushing about their business. It was all normal, ordinary, and at the same time I felt as if my existence had become something else. I changed, and it weighed on me like a stone on my soul. As soon as I entered the apartment, my first thought was to take a shower. I hastily took off my clothes and felt hot streams of water begin to wash over my body, as if washing away all traces of the night's events. But the internal tension remained. The hot water enveloped me, and for a moment I closed my eyes, trying to find some peace within myself. Last night, although emotionally draining, temporarily satisfied my physical desires. I felt like a part of me, suppressed and hidden for a long time, found a way out. But as soon as I turned off the water and stepped out of the shower, reality hit me again with renewed vigor. I stood in front of the mirror, trying to understand my feelings. After putting on my gym clothes, I felt better, but this feeling was temporary. I suddenly felt a heaviness in my stomach, as if someone was squeezing my stomach from the inside. My betrayal, my mistake. I actually slept with another man. I broke my own inhibitions, my principles, my trust. I sat on the sofa, holding my head in my hands, and I felt really sick. What now? Should I tell my boyfriend about this? Could I look him in the eyes, knowing that I had betrayed him, even if it happened when he was far away, thousands of kilometers away from me? The drunken version of me, uninhibited, was not the real me, or was it? These thoughts swirled around in my head, causing more and more confusion. Later, when I was at the gym trying to relieve my anxiety through physical activity, I began to come to some kind of peace with myself. Yes, I cheated, but it was an isolated event. I told myself that I had satisfied a thirst that would otherwise have taken much longer to suppress. And who knows what this could lead to in the future if I continued to ignore my desires. My betrayal, although a mistake, seemed acceptable in this context as a means of avoiding something even more destructive. Should I tell the guy about this? At first, I thought that honesty was the right way, but then the realization came that such a truth could only cause pain without adding anything good. Wouldn't it be selfish to try to ease your conscience at the expense of his suffering? I convinced myself that keeping everything to myself was the kindest and most gentle way out. But even with this conclusion, the guilt still grew inside me, like a poison slowly spreading through my thoughts. I knew I was deceiving myself. Lying to myself was easy at the moment, but was it really the solution? Deep down, I understood, my betrayal was real. This is a fact. But almost everyone lives with some kind of self-deception, right? Show me a person who is not deceiving himself to some extent, and I will show you a liar. When I finished my workout, I checked my phone and saw two messages, one from my boyfriend, the other from my partner in crime. It probably says something about the state of my head that day that I first opened the message from my partner in crime. Partner in crime, hey, I really enjoyed last night. Would you like another drink today? Me, yes, that sounds good. I think we need to discuss something. How about that new place near my office? Partner in crime, great, agreed, 7 p.m. We agreed didn't sound the best after the events of the last 24 hours. Me, it's just a meeting, nothing more. No repeat of last night. 7 p.m. is coming, see you there. For me, this meeting was an opportunity to clarify the situation and not let things get worse after what happened. I wanted us to remain friends, and the longer we put it off, the harder it would be to get over what happened. But clearly, the meeting should have remained just a meeting. I wasn't going to go any further than I already had. I switched to a message from my boyfriend. Guy, having a great time at the bachelor party. I hope your dinner was great last night. Sorry for being jealous, I just wish it was me sitting with you at dinner. I miss you and love you. I answered quickly. Me, dinner was great. Don't worry about jealousy. I miss and love you too. He must have been right by the phone because he answered immediately. Guy, glad you liked it. Hope you went to bed early. What are your plans for the weekend? It's a difficult question. It's best to stick to the truth without revealing too much. Me, actually, everything is calm. I was just at the gym. I don't plan anything special later. In general, it was true. He doesn't need to know that I'm meeting my partner in crime for drinks, because it will just be a quick meeting. Guy, great, I'll call you tomorrow morning. Let's talk then. Me, great, let's talk then. At this moment, I felt pretty good. Yes, last night wasn't ideal, but I was confident that I could keep it a secret and that it wouldn't affect my friendship with my partner in crime or affect my relationship. In fact, I could eat the cake and leave it whole. The evening came quickly, and it was time to prepare for the meeting. Even though I didn't intend to take it to anything more, I still wanted to look good. The bar I chose had recently opened and had a very relaxed atmosphere. You could come there for a drink, a snack, and in general, it was always quite lively, which created a pleasant atmosphere. The dress code was very casual, which suited me well after dinner the night before. I had a new pair of jeans I bought recently that fit snugly, highlighting my toned legs and butt. I was definitely going to wear them. Nothing wrong with showing partner in crime what he was missing out on, with a brown leather belt and a white tank top. To keep it casual, I paired my feet with white strappy sandals. After spending a significant amount of time last night wearing the ugliest underwear I owned that turned out to be completely useless, I decided to go in the complete opposite direction this evening. Beautiful lingerie not only lifted your spirits, but also gave you self-confidence. I bought a red lace thong and bra set in anticipation of my boyfriend's visit, but decided to wear it for the first time today. Knowing that I looked sexy under my clothes gave me strength. When I was dressed, I knew I looked attractive. But it was a casual appeal, not an elegant one like the night before. To complete the look, I wore only light makeup and decided to wear my hair in a ponytail. I decided to walk to the bar, but I was delayed at the traffic light, waiting for the light to turn green, so I arrived a few minutes after 7. The bar was crowded, there was a pleasant atmosphere, and my partner in crime was already sitting at a table. He had a glass of beer and offered to take me a drink, which I readily agreed to. Champagne? He asked with a smile. I laughed. No, not today. A glass of white wine. We settled down with our drinks and started some awkward small talk. To be honest, he looked good. In keeping with the casual atmosphere, he was dressed in long shorts and a t-shirt, with flip-flops on his feet. The t-shirt emphasized his muscles in the most appropriate places, although, of course, I didn't pay attention to it then. The small talk died down, and we sat in slightly awkward silence for about 30 seconds. He spoke first. So, what happened last night? I blushed. I think about it too. What do you think? I gave him the initiative. Well, I'll lay all my cards on the table. It was great. I had a great time. Not just in the hotel room, but everything before that. I really enjoyed our time together. This got me thinking. I was fixated on what happened after dinner and didn't think at all about what happened before. But everything was wonderful. We got along great at dinner, and I haven't received such pleasure from communicating with someone for a long time. Frankly, there was a clear spark between us. Dinner was great. I think we're getting along great. And later, it was great too. I blushed again. Very wonderful. I mean really wonderful. Okay, so we both agree that it was wonderful. Very wonderful. It's already a start. And I really wish last night wasn't the only time we felt so good together. He looked me straight in the eyes as he said this. Maybe we should try this again? I sighed. I have a boyfriend. We agreed it was just for one night. He took my hand across the table, intertwining his fingers with mine. I should have pulled my hand away, but I didn't. His touch seemed to awaken small sparks of electricity in me. What if there was a reason last night? We have amazing chemistry, don't we? I looked at him and nodded reluctantly. He continued, and what harm would it do if we investigated it a little? He'll never know. It could be our secret. I didn't say or do anything. There was a struggle inside me between the part that valued loyalty and the part that recognized that, yes, there was a great attraction between me and partner in crime that perhaps could be explored without harm. If you didn't have a boyfriend, would we be dating now? He asked. I hesitated and then admitted, yes, I think so. So why don't we try it? Explore it, see what happens. I have a boyfriend. I can't be unfaithful to him. I can't do that. Last night was. I was looking for the right words. Was a drunken one-off. It wasn't the start of anything more. Are you sorry about last night? I thought for several long seconds about how to answer. Finally, she said, no, I don't regret it. It was the best one-time relationship in my life. I took his other hand in mine and looked into his eyes. No regrets, but I have to be faithful to my boyfriend. To reassure him, I added, I'll be completely honest with you. Right now, sitting here looking at you, every cell in my body wants to say yes, let's explore this. This could be wonderful. But I can't be that person who cheats. I just can't. Quietly, turning away, he replied, how about being true to yourself? I looked at him in bewilderment. What do you mean? He looked at me again. You worry about your boyfriend and ignore your own feelings. But you have to be true to yourself and explore it. What if this is it? What if you and I are meant for each other? To fall head over heels in love? To grow old together? You have a chance to try it, and if you don't, you'll always wonder what could have been. But if you try, you'll always know that you tried, no matter who you become in the future. Maybe a secret. We can make sure no one gets hurt. He paused. That's what I mean by being true to yourself. This resonated with me. It really responded. Be true to yourself. To try this and end up with a win-win situation where I either reaffirm my love for my boyfriend or realize I want to be with someone else. I hesitated. If we explore this, what will it look like? Do you want this to be a secret? I bit my lip and nodded, but didn't say anything. Then we'll keep it a secret, even from your flatmate. We're fine until tomorrow, until she gets back, but then we'll look for opportunities when we can. People are already used to us going to events together like partners in crime, so we'll just do a little more of that, and instead of going to dinners, we'll meet somewhere more private. But if you want to keep it a secret, we'll do that. I realized that I really wanted this more than anything in the world. Being true to yourself, and in a twisted sense, thus being more true to your boyfriend in the long run. But my mind was still functioning somewhere inside, and it kept me on the edge of sanity, even as images of the events of the morning and night flashed before me. I don't know. This is too much. I need to think. I finished my glass of wine and stood up. I opened my mouth to say something, but couldn't find the right words, so instead I leaned over, gave him a quick peck on the cheek, and left the bar. My partner in crime was left sitting there, looking depressed and resigned to spending the evening alone. When I went outside, my head was spinning with many conflicting emotions. But the main one was the terrible thought that I had just done something that could not be undone, and that there was no turning back now that I had left my partner in crime. I realized that just a few minutes later, I was overcome with a huge feeling of regret. What if he is the one, and will I regret this for the rest of my life? I walked down the street towards my house, but then stopped and turned back, then turned around again and walked towards my apartment. I was in such a breakup. If I turned back, it would mean that I consciously made the decision to cheat on my boyfriend. There will be no excuses for alcohol. No excuses that I just got caught up in the flow of events like last night. I will return to another man, and without a doubt, I will do with him what I should only do with my boyfriend. But how can I forgive myself if I don't come back? Last night and this morning were special. I haven't felt this inside of me, this attraction, this desire for many years, probably since my boyfriend and I first started dating. What if I'm missing out on something truly special? I hesitated and then made a decision. Walking back to the bar, I saw him leave as I got closer. I called out to him. He stopped and walked towards me with a perplexed expression on his face, stopping a couple of meters from me. I stood there trying to find words, but even though my mouth was moving, nothing came out. I couldn't figure out how to say it and ended up just standing there in despair. He nodded, encouraging me. Finally, after a minute, I said, we. Then I took a deep breath and started again. Can you keep this a secret? He nodded. Yes, sure. I lowered my eyes for a few moments and then looked back at him. Well, are you coming? The only thing that stopped us from having sex right, there was a couple of kitchen staff leaving a nearby restaurant for a cigarette break. Laughing, we walked down the street, holding hands, and returned to my apartment where we had sex. Later, we ordered food from a local sushi bar and went to sit on the apartment's balcony, waiting for her to arrive. I took a bottle of wine and 2 glasses out of the refrigerator, and we settled down comfortably to drink. He put his shorts and t-shirt back on, and I put on a light summer dress that I often wore on weekends, with shoulder straps and quite short. I didn't put on any underwear because it seemed unnecessary, and I let my hair down. I wanted to pretend that I was just throwing it all on, but in reality I was trying to look my best for him. We spent some time chatting, laughing together, and even reminiscing about what happened at the club the night before and our walk to the beach. It all seemed like a distant dream, although less than 24 hours had passed. By the time the food arrived and we had finished our meal, we had managed to drink almost the entire bottle, and I was starting to feel quite tipsy. Afterwards, we had sex again and fell asleep. Morning. I knew it was morning, waking up still in the arms of my partner in crime. I didn't have the same reaction as 24 hours ago when I tried to escape. Instead, I just snuggled closer to him, kissed his neck, and went back to sleep. Everything seemed right. He woke me up a little later with a cup of coffee in bed. For this, he received the highest score. "How are you feeling this morning?" he asked. "Everything okay after yesterday?" "Never felt better, my handsome lover," I joked. It was a completely new experience for me, and I loved it. It's not that I want to do this every day, but I definitely want to do it again soon. "I don't know if it'll work out tonight. Your neighbor might come back and interfere," he replied with a smile. I smiled back. If not that, then something similar. I took a sip of coffee, then put the cup on the nightstand next to the bed. "Come here. We've never had morning sex before, and this is my favorite." Afterwards, we both fell asleep again, but after a while, it was already late morning, and, unfortunately, my partner in crime had to leave soon so that my flatmate would not discover us. He went to the bathroom to take a shower. I took the opportunity to put on a t-shirt that I often slept in, a men's gray XL t-shirt that used to belong to my boyfriend, with the name of some random American sports team on it. I considered it clothing and wasn't embarrassed to walk around the apartment in it. It reached about a quarter of the thigh, but I certainly didn't want to go out anywhere like that, especially without underwear. Walking out of the room into the kitchen, I was disturbed by a sudden buzzing next to the bed. My phone rang and my boyfriend's number appeared. I answered it and went into my roommate's bedroom to talk privately. This will be difficult. I was and still am a terrible liar, so I really hoped that this conversation would allow me to avoid outright lying. "Hello," I answered, trying to sound cheerful. "Hi, how are you?" He seemed to be somewhere in a club with loud music in the background. "Thank you, have a nice weekend. It's very cool today. I'm going to spend some time in the pool." Absolutely right, so I felt like I was safe. "And you? What were you doing?" "Oh, regular bachelor parties. Woke up late, had a few drinks, and really enjoyed the day. I just wanted to check in quickly to see how you were." "Yes, thank you. As I say, have a relaxing weekend." And Friday evening. Dinner was great. The food was fantastic. We should try to have lunch there when you come to stay. Did you come out afterwards? We went out for drinks a couple of times. Again, strictly true. After that, I just had to go to bed. This is also strictly true. By the time I went to bed, I was exhausted. Still true. Great, looks like a good night. We started chatting about different things, talking for probably the next 5 minutes about this and that. Suddenly, my flatmate's bedroom door swung open and a voice said, "Where is my humble fantasy woman?" I blushed and frantically pointed at the phone, gesturing to my naked partner in crime. "Please, please be quiet." He smiled back at me and said the word sorry. "Was it someone in the background?" asked my boyfriend. Uh, uh, no, I don't think so. I stuttered too quickly. Like I said, I'm a terrible liar. It really sounded like the man was asking something, he said. Instead of leaving the room, my weekend lover came up to me and started kissing me. Damn, this wasn't what I planned. I tried to push him away from me with my free hand, but he was persistent. No, my window is open, so someone must have been outside. Instead, I tried to pry his hands away from me with my free hand. He was smiling and clearly enjoying the game he was playing. "Ah, okay, no problem. Listen, it's great to talk. I'm glad we found the time. I just wanted to apologize for being so paranoid the last time we spoke, and that I love you very much and can't wait to see you." "What was that?" came the voice on the phone. "Oh, nothing. I just spilled some water on the bed. Tell me what you did last night." It got out of control. I was trapped. My partner in crime thought hitting on me while I was talking to my boyfriend was a fun game, and if I let him know it wasn't, it would give the whole game away. This was in the days before cell phones didn't turn off buttons, and I couldn't talk to him without risking my boyfriend hearing him. But at the same time, I couldn't talk my boyfriend out of calling. He was so worried about dinner on Friday that my strange behavior today would be a wake-up call for him. "I love you." "I love you too," came the voice on the phone. "I miss you." "I miss you too. Have a nice evening. I love you so much." And with that, I ended the conversation. It took me a second to catch my breath and realize what the hell had just happened. "What the hell were you doing?" I managed to say. He stopped and looked at me, puzzled. I got out of bed and stood on my feet. "Answer me. What the hell were you doing?" This time I practically screamed. He stood in front of me and I hit him in the face. He took a step back. "What was that for?" he asked. "What was that for?" I shouted. "What do you think it was for?" "I don't know. You obviously liked it. Why are you attacking me?" "It was not okay," I answered angrily. "I was talking to my boyfriend, and you recklessly came here and risked everything for him while he was talking to me, but to you, it's just a game." He paused. I'm so sorry. I thought you liked it. It seemed like a hot idea, and it seemed like a fun thing to do. It was indecent." "It wasn't. You humiliated my boyfriend in front of me. This is personal between me and him, and you ruined everything." "I didn't realize. But you said we need to have a lot of sex this weekend. I stand by what you said. That didn't mean having sex with me whenever you decided. You may have bought me dinner and paid for our room last night, but I'm not your toy, or do you think so?" "No, not at all. I thought we had a special connection after the last 2 nights. Honestly, I thought there was more to it than just sex. I thought there were also feelings. Am I wrong?" Now I paused. I quietly replied, "No, you are not mistaken. The last 2 days have been incredible, and I realize that I have developed strong feelings for you." By this point, we were back in my bedroom, and we both sat on the bed, and he said, "I love you." I hesitated, not knowing what to say. I, I think I might fall in love with you, but not now. Don't complicate things. We talked about this last night at the bar. Research, that's all. I want it to be challenging. I love you. Leave your boyfriend." "I can't. You don't understand. I love him. I love him very much. I love you incredibly too, and I'm so glad we spent this time together, but I won't leave him. You're not in love with me, it's sex. Right now you're imagining that if we were together, sex would always be like this, and it would be incredible. But this is not so this is a fantasy. We're wonderfully compatible, and you've given me more pleasure than I can remember, but if we were together, it would only be sex. I tried it because it's a one-time thing, and we don't have any relationship baggage to carry with us. He looked upset, but nodded in understanding. And what remains for us now? Listen, what happened now was not normal. I need time to realize. I told you no several times, and you persisted. Sorry, I didn't realize you never told me to stop. My ex and I used to do things so often. I thought everything was fine. How could I tell you to stop? If I did that, my boyfriend would hear, and that would be the end of everything. And to be clear, if that happened, you and I would have no chance in the future. Realization crossed his face, and he knew he had messed up. I'm sorry. This is the beginning. But the thing is, you just touched me without my consent. I know that you are a good person, and I know that you have only had experience with one person before me, and I admit that you thought that I agreed. But the thing is, I didn't do it. A little advice. You need to be very, very careful when doing this. Maybe it was okay in your last relationship, but maybe your ex wasn't happy about it and was just playing along. Please be in the future much more careful. He lay down on the bed and sighed in disappointment. I can't believe I screwed up like that. I'm really sorry. If I had realized this, I would have stopped. But please don't end it. Listen, I need to think. Can you just leave and we can meet for coffee in a couple of hours when I've collected my thoughts? Don't worry, I'm not going to do anything stupid. I know you're a good person and you're upset about what happened. I just need time. Okay, I understand. Can you text me when you are ready to meet? He got up to get dressed. Wait, I said. I walked up to him, hugged and kissed him. Then he got dressed and left. After what just happened, I first went into automatic mode, cleaning my flatmate's room, tidying up the living room, and basically moving all the trash of two people making love around the apartment for the last 12 or so hours. I took a bath in the bathroom and spent the next hour soaking in it, replaying the last few days in my head. I went from insisting that there was nothing to worry about to convincing myself that the date wasn't technically cheating, to deciding that it would be okay to get a little naughty, to having a sex marathon in a luxury hotel room. I decided not to do it and then did it all again in my apartment. I made a conscious and deliberate decision to essentially have an affair, and then, within 12 hours of that decision, everything fell apart. Thoughts about what to do now raced through my head. In the short term, I really had two options. I could either continue this with my partner in crime, or I could call it completion. After what had just happened, it was difficult to argue anything other than the latter. My trust in his judgment was gone and might never return. But there was no shelter there. But then the question arose, what happens next? We had a lot of mutual friends. We hung out together all the time. I couldn't avoid him unless I gave up my entire social life here. So we needed to see each other socially, which meant we needed to agree on what stood between us. It would be terrible if every time we went out as a group, he expected to end the evening with me. But also selfishly, maybe in the right situation, and I sincerely hoped that we could remain friends. I sent a message and, feeling a little nervous, headed towards the cafe. Everything that was happening seemed to me both unreal and inevitable. The sports uniform I wore seemed almost a symbol of my attempt to be honest and open, but as always, I subconsciously choose something that showed off my body at least a little. Yes, it's not the sexiest outfit, but still, maybe not so bad. Ultimately, I realized that appearance does not matter. What was important was the conversation, what would happen in the next few minutes. When I arrived at the cafe, I managed to arrive first. I ordered our usual drinks, knowing his tastes by heart. Even though it was a small gesture, deep down I knew it was important. Despite everything that had happened, I still knew him, still wanted him to feel comfortable. He came in, dressed in sportswear, with the same slight weariness on his face as mine. I immediately realized that he had probably just left the gym too, perhaps also trying to find an outlet for his emotions. "Are you okay?" he asked, sitting down opposite. I nodded and smiled, although everything was seething inside. Yes, I'm fine. I was just thinking. He looked at me carefully, as if understanding what I was about to say. I thought too. Do you want to start first? I sighed, collecting my thoughts. Yes, probably. Look, what happened was amazing. The last 48 hours have been incredible, and I have loved every minute of it. But honestly, I'm afraid you're getting carried away too much. We both get carried away, and I have a boyfriend. He would never do that to me, and I just feel like we're not compatible in the long run. I'm very sorry, but I can't continue this. He took my hand in his, squeezing it gently. I understand. I'm very sorry too. You are wonderful, and I wish things had turned out differently. I think we could be a good couple. His words cut deep, and I felt tears welling up in my eyes, but I held them back. What will we do when we meet again? We're always at the same events. He looked at me with a slight smile. I hope this is not the last time we sleep together, but I understand that you have a boyfriend, and you probably shouldn't expect anything to change while you're with him. I looked at him and answered honestly, after what happened this morning, yes, I think so. He nodded, accepting my decision. Although we make a good couple in bed, don't we? He added with a sly smile. I couldn't help but smile back. Yes, we are good. Never say never, right? He looked at me, raising an eyebrow in interest. What do you mean? I sighed, trying to find the words. Well, you need to move on. I will be glad if you start dating someone. You deserve to be with someone special. But if suddenly you find yourself lonely and I'm alone, we shouldn't be embarrassed to talk to each other. He smiled, understanding what I was getting at. Sounds good. We talked a little more, discussed everything that had happened over the past days, and I felt myself slowly letting go of this tension. Finally, I stood up, ready to leave. See you soon? I asked, looking back at him as he stood up too. I hope so, he replied, and we hugged. His hug was warm, but without the passion that was there before. It was the end of something and the beginning of something new. I left the cafe feeling both light and heavy. Ease because the conversation was frank and honest. And the heaviness comes from the realization that this stage of my life is over, although I knew that its echoes would still resound in my soul. The cold air immediately enveloped me, as if waking me up completely. The noise of the city, the sounds of cars, and the steps of people rushing about their business began to bring me back to reality. I took a deep breath, trying to finally free myself from the weight of the last conversation. Everything that happened seemed so important and insignificant at the same time. Life continued to move forward, as always. I walked slowly, lost in my thoughts. On the one hand, this conversation was a relief. I finally said everything I felt, and we both accepted it. But on the other hand, I couldn't get rid of what I felt. Emptiness, as if a piece of me remained in this cafe. Thinking about how everything would have turned out if these circumstances had not existed did not leave me. We could be a great couple, perhaps even more than just temporary lovers. Walking past shop windows, I stole a glance at my reflection. The sports uniform really looked simple, but even in it, I saw the same woman who last night decided to overstep her principles. And now, looking at my reflection, I wondered, how long will I live with this feeling of guilt? Maybe it really could be left in the past, as I said over a cup of coffee. Or maybe it will haunt me for a long time, quietly reminding me of what happened. Returning home, I felt somehow empty. It seemed that everything around had frozen, and I was again left alone with my thoughts. My phone was lying on the table. The screen was on a message from a guy. Oddly enough, I didn't feel the usual warmth from what he wrote. My heart was left somewhere there in a conversation with another man. I picked up the phone and read the message. Hi, how are you? Hope you are fine. I miss you and can't wait to get home. Let's talk later when you're free. Love you. His words were always warm and supportive. I knew that he was sincere in his feelings. But at that moment, I felt that I could no longer answer him with the same enthusiasm. A strange apathy came over me, as if there was now an invisible wall between us. I sat down on the sofa, holding the phone in my hands, and looked at the message for a long time. How to answer? What can I say? I just wanted time to stop so I could take a breath and sort myself out. But life doesn't stop, and now I have a choice: tell him the truth or continue to live with this burden. While I was sitting there, the phone rang again. It was him. Sighing, I pressed the reply button. "Hello," I said, and in this short word I could already feel the heaviness. "Hi, how are you? I miss you." His voice sounded cheerful and carefree, as if nothing had changed. "I'm fine. I'm just a little tired." My words seemed alien to me, as if I was saying them not for him, but for myself. "Oh, I see. I hope you're not overloading yourself there. I'm still busy here, too. But I think about you all the time." His words filled me with conflicting feelings. On the one hand, I knew that he really misses and loves me. But on the other hand, the realization that I had changed poisoned it all. We talked for a few more minutes, him sharing his news and me trying to sound interested. But it all seemed so superficial. After finishing the conversation, I was left alone again. And now I had to decide how to live further. Should I leave everything in the past or take a step forward and tell him the truth? Perhaps I was just not ready for this answer yet. I sat on the couch, holding the phone in my hands, as if my entire future depended on this small device. The conversation with the guy was short, and although he was sincere, I could not get rid of the feeling of falseness. The usual phrases that we exchanged before now seemed empty, like shells that no longer contained any meaning or emotion. I was filled with a strange feeling of alienation. His love, his care, it was all there, but I felt that I had lost my ability to answer him in kind. The question of truth continued to plague me. I have always believed in honesty, and while many things can be hidden, changing is another matter. The guilt sat deep inside me, like a splinter that could not be pulled out without causing pain. But if I tell the truth, won't it ruin everything? I stood up and began to slowly walk around the room. Thoughts were spinning in my head, randomly colliding with each other. I knew that the time for decision was approaching, and no matter how hard I tried to postpone this moment, sooner or later I would have to choose which path to take. I sat on the windowsill, looking at the city lights. The night was just beginning to take over, and it was starting to get dark outside the windows. Car lights, street lamps, it all looked familiar, but as if from another life. A life where there were no lies, where everything was simple. The phone vibrated again. It was him. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to hear his voice again, which now seemed to me a reminder that I should be better, more honest. But I couldn't ignore him. I answered, "Hey, honey, sorry to bother you again." His voice was warm and gentle as always. "I just wanted to say that we were able to agree on a vacation, and I will arrive a week earlier. I can be with you in just a few days." These words pierced me like an electric shock. He's coming soon. And all this means is that I will no longer be able to hide the truth if I decide to tell it. But should I say it? He was so joyful, and the thought of his world being destroyed simply because I couldn't help myself was unbearable. "This is wonderful," I answered, trying to make my voice sound cheerful, although everything inside was trembling. "I'm very glad that you're coming." "Me too. I miss you like crazy. I want to hug you soon. Look, I won't keep you. I just wanted to give you some news." "See you soon." We said goodbye, and I was left alone in the apartment. Now I had only a few days left to make a decision. Tell the truth or leave it all behind. It seemed to me that both options led to pain. The next day, when I went to work, I still couldn't get yesterday's conversation over coffee out of my head. He and I decided not to continue, but his image still appeared before my eyes. His touch, his words. It was like I left a part of myself with him, and that part didn't want to come back. The excitement was growing, and I didn't know what to do next. In the evening, I decided to take a break and meet with a friend. I hoped that talking about something simple and mundane would help me at least temporarily forget about the dilemma that was tearing me apart. We were sitting in a small cafe, discussing the latest news, but my friend immediately noticed that I was not quite myself. "You look a little distracted. Is everything okay?" she asked, narrowing her eyes slightly. Yeah, it's just a lot on my mind, I muttered, feeling the anxiety wash over me again. Do you want to talk? Her voice was soft, and I knew that she was always ready to listen. I hesitated, not knowing whether to tell her everything that happened, but then I realized that I couldn't keep everything to myself anymore. I cheated on him, I said quietly, looking down at my cup of coffee. These words, spoken out loud, sounded louder than I expected, and a wave of shame washed over me. She was silent for a moment, clearly digesting what she had heard. Wow, she finally breathed. And how do you feel? Terrible, I admitted honestly. I don't know what to do. Should I tell him or hide it? She sighed, thoughtfully tapping her fingers on the table. This is a difficult question, but I think honesty is always better. Even if the truth hurts, living a lie will be even harder. The question is, are you ready for the consequences? I was silent, realizing that this was exactly the question I was afraid to ask myself. The friend's words hung in the air, filling the silence at the table. Are you ready for the consequences? Her question, as if weighed on scales, penetrated deeper and deeper into my thoughts. At that moment, I realized that until now I had been avoiding the topic, trying to focus on what to say rather than what would happen next. I didn't think about the destructive wave that could overwhelm my relationships and my life. I thought about it. Honesty was definitely the right choice. But what price am I willing to pay for it? My boyfriend may not be able to forgive me. Perhaps his trust in me will be irretrievably lost. I imagined his eyes full of pain and disappointment when he found out. But on the other hand, staying in this lie, it would be another chain that would keep me trapped in guilt. My friend apparently felt that I was drowning in thoughts and gently touched my hand. Look, I don't know all the details, but if it's bothering you this much, maybe it's a sign that you need to take action. Her voice was soft but decisive. You yourself understand that you won't be able to simply forget about what happened. I looked up at her. Her words were true. Every day, with every new thought about what I had done, this feeling grew like a snowball. I couldn't just leave it behind and pretend nothing happened. If I continue to live a lie, it will sooner or later destroy our relationship, even if I never tell the truth. It will be a slow, quiet destruction. You're right, I finally said, sighing. But I don't know how to tell him this. I'm afraid I'll lose him. My friend squeezed my hand a little tighter. It's fear, and it's normal. But you can't build a relationship on fear. Ultimately, you have to be honest with yourself and with him. And if he loves you, maybe he'll give you a chance. But even if not, it will still be better than living with this lie. Her words sounded logical, but that didn't make it any easier. I knew she was right, but the fear of the possible consequences was so strong that I could hardly breathe, imagining this conversation. We sat for a while longer, chatting about other things, but my thoughts kept returning to what lay ahead. When the evening came to an end, I thanked her for her support, and we said goodbye. I felt a little lighter, but still the tension did not leave me. When I got home, I fell back on the sofa, looking at my phone. My friend's words rang in my head. I knew I couldn't put off this decision, but now I realized one thing: I need time. I couldn't jump into this conversation thoughtlessly. I needed to collect my thoughts and find the right words. Several days passed. I decided not to say anything until the guy returned. I wanted to meet him in person, looking into his eyes, and not through a phone or video call. All these days I tried to behave as usual, although my thoughts constantly returned to the dilemma that was still facing me. Finally, the day came when he arrived. I met him at the airport. He smiled, his eyes shone with joy. He hugged me tightly, and I felt a familiar warmth. For a moment in his arms, I almost forgot about everything that happened. Almost. We returned home, and everything seemed so normal. But I knew that the moment to talk was approaching. The next evening, as we sat on the couch watching TV, I realized I couldn't wait any longer. "We need to talk," I said, my voice sounding too harsh. He looked at me, frowning slightly. "About what?" he asked, putting the remote control aside. I sighed, gathering my courage. This was the moment I feared most. I need to tell you something. What happened while you were away? His face changed. I saw the tension begin to build in his eyes. He looked at me silently, waiting for me to continue. I cheated on you. The words came out of me like a dull blow. It was both a relief and a horror to say this. My words hung in the air like heavy stones, ready to fall and destroy everything that was between us. I couldn't take my eyes off his face, trying to read every emotion, every movement. For the first few seconds, he was simply silent. Time seemed to stand still, and the room became unbearably quiet. I could hear my own heart beating loudly in my chest. His face slowly changed. At first, it was neutral, as if he had not yet realized what exactly I said. But gradually, as the meaning of my words dawned on him, his gaze became clouded, and a wrinkle appeared on his forehead. He looked at me in disbelief, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "What are you doing?" His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but there was a sense of an impending storm in it. I swallowed, trying to find words that could soften the blow, but there were no such words. "I cheated on you," I repeated, as if I myself didn't believe what I was saying. The words were rough, like rough stones that had difficulty coming out of my throat. "I was drunk. It was a mistake. It was one time I—" "Who?" he interrupted, his voice becoming cold and hard. His eyes, full of distrust and pain, looked straight into mine. This question pierced me. I understood that he wanted to know everything, but I was not sure that he was ready to hear the details. However, there was no point in remaining silent now. It was one person, with whom we have known for a long time. I tried to speak as softly as possible, but it did not help. It only happened once, and He abruptly stood up from the sofa, interrupting me. His movements were fast and clumsy, as if he didn't know what to do with his hands. He walked around the room without looking at me and stopped at the window. I saw how his shoulders twitched with tension, how he clenched his fists, clearly struggling with himself, trying to keep his emotions under control. "How could you?" he finally said without turning his head. His voice was barely audible, as if he was saying this more to himself than to me. "How could you do this to me?" I felt my heart clench in pain. At that moment, I realized the depth of my mistake. No excuses, no words could erase what I had done. "I don't know," I muttered, feeling tears welling in my eyes. "I was drunk. I missed you. It was a mistake that I immediately realized. I don't want to lose you." He turned to me, his face distorted with pain and anger. "A mistake? This is not just a mistake, it is a betrayal." His voice rose, and I felt how each blow pierced me through and through. "You cheated on me. Haven't you even thought about how this hurts me? How is this going to destroy everything we've built?" I wanted to say something, to explain how I regretted my action, but he didn't give me a chance. "Do you know how much I love you?" His voice became quieter again, but this did not lessen the pain in his words. "I trusted you more than anyone. I thought that you were my soulmate, that everything would be fine with us. And now, I don't even know who you are." These words pierced me like a knife. He talked not only about my betrayal, but also about our past, about the plans that we made together. I felt how not only trust was collapsing, but also the entire foundation of our relationship. He turned away again and was silent for several moments. Tension hung in the room like a heavy weight that could not be lifted. I sat there, not knowing what to do or say. Any words seemed useless. Finally, he turned to me, and his face became calmer, although the fire of pain still burned in his eyes. "I don't know if I can forgive this," he said, his voice almost lifeless. "I need time, and perhaps distance." These words hit me the hardest. He was leaving. I knew I couldn't blame him. I took this step, destroying everything we had. But the realization that I could lose him forever was unbearable. "I understand," I whispered, my voice shaking from the tears that were now streaming down my cheeks. "I just want you to know that I love you and I'm sorry. It's a pity." He nodded but didn't answer. He stood at the window for a few more minutes, as if gathering his thoughts, and then slowly walked towards the door. I knew that this departure could be the last, but I couldn't stop him. I should have given him time. The door slammed, leaving me alone in the room, which suddenly seemed too empty and cold. I sat looking at this closed space, realizing that our lives were now divided into before and after, and I didn't know what the after would be like. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.